Starting with the Qs this morning, taking a look at the hourly chart, we'll notice actually all of these charts have the VWAPs converging. Makes me wonder about chart validity here. Got to double check on that. Because this drop off is so unusual. Here's what we have. We've got this big move down, lower low coming down into support level 2, but missing support level 2 on the weekly. That's support level 2 on the daily. This did come down further, making a lower low. The Qs continue to be weak, but recover pretty fairly. We're looking at a new lower low level. This is a suction event. So if the chart fails to breach and test the prior day's pivot, it is going to come back and test this level. So here's my thought on the day. Right now, we're sitting above relative congestion. We closed higher. The market is not falling backwards. It's still holding. It's relatively tight, not very gappy this morning. That could change after the results and data could start coming out, but as of now, not gappy. If it gaps up, it's going to come into this region, the prior day's pivot, and that's going to look like 73.58, 73.57, something like that. So we've got this region right here, that's all this congestion, might actually end up coming down here. That will give us trouble. All right, so if we have 73.50, I want you to take a look at this one before it gets here. There could be trouble right here, so I don't want you to set an automatic sell there and it not come and reverse. The best bet for us would be if we came back, held this relative formation, but we came back and popped off of this relative congestion event, or perhaps this area, and then move to the upside. The eventual test being the weekly pivot. As long as we stay in this section, we've got pretty negative trending territory, but we're locked between the 50 and the VWAPs and the 200, and that should make for choppy trading. Right in between the 50 and the 200 should make for very, very choppy trading. I don't anticipate a real pretty day here, but if it inflects and gets above, we know we can stair step from the pivot here, 73.50 to the pivot, daily pivot, to the weekly pivot, 73.80, to resistance level 1, 73.96, then to 72.12. All right, that looks good from that end. If it loses 73.50 and begins to drift downward, you can take the short as it loses 73.50 because this is a good suction point, right? So you know that if it pops up here into 73.50 and begins to roll over, it's got plenty of suction to bring it down into this 73 event. So you want to watch that carefully, trade off of that. Here's the IWM. IWM came right into support level 2 of the daily pivots and then bounced off support level 1 of the weekly pivots to end all the way back up above the weekly pivot and above resistance level 1. Tremendous recovery, tremendous strength shown here. It came from under all of these moving averages and the VWAPs, everything there to end up and over. What's the trade here? Above 98.85 should have long action into these levels that we had yesterday. If it loses the pivot, going to have a suction at the prior day's pivot, which is 98.25. Now those things are really close together. If you want to short it off the loss of the weekly pivot, then you can. Could be a little bouncy. You got to watch it. trade that on a smaller time frame, I believe. And if it loses that daily pivot, the prior day's pivot, it's going to come down here into, yeah, I still think that's the right level, into 97.95 and then 97.57, and it's going to stair step down. If indeed it loses this level, it's going to come down here and make its way down to S2 during the course of the week. That's what the formation is going to point to. We're just going to have to see how well it holds from the levels and anticipate from this action what's going on. But since the SMIs are flat, the longer based one is flat, we don't really quite know whether we're just bouncing up into resistance and then falling back into support and bouncing into resistance and falling back into support. That's what we generally have when the formations look like that. And we could indeed have a little bit of choppy action until we get some major news that moves us. Weakest one of the bunch here is SPY. That concerns me just a little bit, but SPY, look at where this is. It's trending downward. It's not flat. We do have upside momentum here, but all in all, the chart looks very, very weak compared to the others. Notice this thing did exactly what I said it would yesterday. I said, hey, listen, pre-market, it's going to bounce. We're going to have that failure at the lower high. I had said 164. It turned out to be 164.16. It fell right down into this region we called for and then reversed right back up. It's still very far away from the breakdown level. Probably necessary that it tests that, but we could also suffer from the ping pong effect because we are sitting between very important moving averages and people are fighting back and forth or what to do. Trade long above the pivot right here, yesterday's pivot into the weekly pivot. If it loses this 164.16, I'd actually wait. Well, no, you could take that short below the 164.10 area. It should run into this 163.59 area. That seems like a suction event, but again, not a ton of catalyst to see movement there for downside momentum unless this inflects and turns to the downside. Levels are really similar from the prior day. Good luck trading.